Chapter 333. Bai Xiling was taken aback. She didn't expect Su Gan to mention her name. But soon, a smile crept onto her face. A beautiful lady's smile carried a charm that no ordinary person possessed. "Don't worry, I won't spoil your plans." "That's good." Su Gan nodded and fell silent. Dreams were one thing, but reality was another. Even though they had dispatched quite a few cavalrymen to observe Wang Chong while he was carrying out his mission, both Su Gan and Huang Yongtu still fell for their traps time and time again. No matter how many times they observed it, it seemed as if they would never learn it. The traps of these bandits were endless, and there would always be some unexpected one that would pop out. Yet, it seemed as if Wang Chong would never encounter such a trap. That feeling left the duo frenzied. How could a prestigious clan possibly impart such a third-rate secret art to them? As scions of prestigious clans, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu had never come into contact with such a thing before. Only the scions of commoners and hunters would have such a deep understanding of such traps. The familiarity that Wang Chong displayed made them even more certain that Wang Chong was a commoner, and their dislike for him deepened. However, that wasn't the crux of the matter. More importantly, despite conquering 6 bandit camps, they didn't find anything at all. Their greatest harvest was 80 taels of white. This was even more infuriating than having nothing at all. Furthermore, what left the duo even more embarrassed was that Wang Chong had conquered 2 more strongholds during this period of time, obtaining a total of more than 300,000 gold taels. How could the duo face such humiliation? Even Su Gan, who was calm at the start, fell silent before Wang Chong. Every time the operation ended and the group gathered together, the two of them would feel Wang Chong's mocking gaze on them. Even though Wang Chong didn't even spare them a glance. "It's not that I'm lecturing you, but if you still look down on him and despise him, thinking that he is some commoner in the Kunwa training camp, there will be a lot more such embarrassing and intolerable scenes in the future." A cold and haughty female voice suddenly rang in their ears. They didn't need to turn around to know that it must be Bai Xiling from the Bai family. Now, only she could speak in such an arrogant voice beside the two of them. "Bai Xiling, if you like that kid so much, why don't you go and hang out with him? Why are you still following us?" Huang Yongtu mocked coldly. This woman's words were too harsh. He didn't like it. If it weren't for the fact that the Bai family was powerful in the capital, and that this woman wasn't a good person, he would have been impolite to her long ago. "Huang Yongtu, you really don't know how to behave. I kindly reminded you, but you treated it as malicious intent. No wonder you can't win against your second brother and are suppressed by him in the family." Bai Xiling gently stroked the hair beside her ear and retorted rudely. Huang Yongtu's eyes narrowed in rage. This woman was too insensible. The competition for the throne was extremely intense, and that matter had always been a taboo for him. Yet she actually dared to expose it in front of everyone. Enough. Just as Huang Yongtu was about to explode, Su Gan, who was seated cross-legged on the ground, suddenly called out, "Huang Yongtu, you can't be thinking of lowering yourself to the level of a woman, right?" Huang Yongtu's face froze. He could ignore Bai Xiling, but he couldn't ignore Su Gan's words. "Bai Xiling, it can't be that you came here just to humiliate us? Speak, what are you trying to say?" Seated on the floor, Su Gan said impassively. "Su Gan, at least you're smart. I didn't intend to say it, but in view of your words, I'll give you a reminder for free. After fighting with him for so many days, haven't you noticed what kind of steed he is riding?" Bai Xiling glanced in Wang Chong's direction and said coldly, "Steed?" Hearing those words, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu immediately turned their gazes in Wang Chong's direction. Under the gentle moonlight, Wang Chong's steed was grazing on the grass near a lush locust tree. Under the bright moonlight, the steed's coat was exceptionally glossy, giving it the air of a majestic steed. Good steed. This was the first time Su Gan was looking at Wang Chong's steed. This was also the first time he realized that Wang Chong's steed was exceptionally good-looking. But that was all. Su Gan couldn't tell what Bai Xiling was trying to show him. "Bai Xiling, what do you mean by that? If you have anything to say, just spit it out. What's the point of hiding things?" While Su Gan was only thinking about it, Huang Yongtu's words were far from polite. If they sure are blind. I've already explained it to you, but they still don't understand what's going on. Serves them right to be toyed with. Take a closer look at the surroundings of the steed's hooves. Is there anything different about them? Bai Xiling said coldly. Upon hearing Bai Xiling's words, the duo's gazes immediately shifted downward. With a single glance, they finally understood what Bai Xiling was trying to get them to pay attention to. Under the moonlight, the four hooves of the steed were as white as snow, untainted by even the slightest speck of dust. At a glance, it looked as if it was floating in midair, creating a mystical sight. A thought suddenly struck Su Gan's mind, and shock surfaced in his eyes for the first time. On the other hand, Huang Yongtu's complexion was the same as well. It seems like those two fellows aren't too stupid after all. Taking in the expressions of the duo, Bai Xiling heaved a long sigh of relief. As scions of prestigious clans, their eyes weren't too shabby. The white-hoofed shadow is a majestic steed of the royal palace, a prized imperial steed of the royal family. It's difficult for even officials to be rewarded with it. That fellow has been riding it for several days now, and yet, you two fools still thought that he was an ordinary scion. Aren't you afraid of becoming a laughingstock? Bai Xiling didn't let go of this opportunity to ridicule the duo. Wang Chong couldn't have imagined that the reason why Bai Xiling viewed him in such a favorable light wasn't due to her intuition. Rather, it was because she had recognized the white-hoofed shadow beneath Wang Chong on the first day. This woman was far more intelligent than Wang Chong had imagined, and her thoughts were also much more meticulous. In truth, Bai Xiling could have warned them long ago, but there was no way Bai Xiling would admit to it. How is that possible? The white-hoofed shadow is an imperial steed of the royal palace, and even the influential officials of the royal court find it hard to obtain one. How could they possibly reward it to a brat of dubious origins? Oof, Bai Xiling, don't spout nonsense. It's just a horse with white hooves. What nonsense are you spouting? You've gone crazy thinking about men. The last sentence was spoken by Huang Yongtu. Idiot. Huang Yongtu's last sentence caused Bai Xiling's brows to furrow, and her heart to burn with rage. She had warned them out of goodwill, but they had completely taken her for granted. Bai Xiling was about to explode, but she quickly calmed down. Huang Yongtu, don't bite the hand that feeds you. You don't know how to appreciate kindness. This is all I can do to help you. Believe it or not, I'm not the one who's going to lose face. With that, Bai Xiling coldly snorted and tugged on the reins. She walked away, leaving a cold and elegant back view to the duo. This woman. Huang Yongtu was also furious. Bai Xiling's personality was truly unlikable. However, Huang Yongtu couldn't do anything to her. The women of the Bai clan weren't easy to deal with. Bai Xiling soon left. But after Bai Xiling's departure, the duo calmed down. Even Huang Yongtu, who had mocked her a moment ago, fell silent. The duo wasn't fools. If Wang Chong succeeded once or twice, it could still be attributed to coincidence. But if he succeeded 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, or even 6 times, it was no longer a coincidence. Throughout their journey west, Wang Chong didn't fail once. On the other hand, the duo didn't succeed even once. With their backgrounds, this was completely abnormal. Not only so, thinking back, Wang Chong's colt was also abnormal. Even though it had yet to reach adulthood, its leg strength, speed, and the intelligence it displayed were not inferior to any divine steed. In fact, it might even be superior. It was impossible for an ordinary warhorse or foal to have such a performance. Brother Su, do you think that what Bai Xiling said is true? Huang Yongtu hesitated for a long moment before breaking the silence. Seated on the ground, Su Gan didn't say a word. But most of the time, silence was an answer. The relationship between Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and Wang Chong didn't improve. But Bai Xiling's words weren't completely ineffective. At the very least, when Su Gan and Huang Yongtu met Wang Chong, they were no longer as arrogant and superior as before. Instead, they were avoiding Wang Chong, and there was a hint of bewilderment in the depths of their eyes. At the same time, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu also let go of their pride. After failing for a few more days, the two of them finally learned to work together. They combined their forces and went up the mountain to encircle the bandits. Even though it would still alarm the bandits on the mountain with the two of them working together, they had a high chance of success. At the very least, they weren't constantly failing like before. Looks like you've done well. Wang Chong retracted his gaze from the duo beneath the tree, turned around, and looked at the white-robed lady beside him with a smile. This lady had truly refreshed his understanding of the world. He had no idea what she said, but Su Gan and Huang Yongtu actually agreed to work together. That was truly astounding. No matter how well I've done, I can't compare to you, Bai Xiling said calmly. Glancing at the huge chests carried by Wang Chong's subordinates, she estimated that there were at least 600,000 to 700,000 gold taels in there. This was almost more than the annual earnings of those influential aristocratic families in the capital. As expected, robbing was much more profitable than doing proper business. More importantly, there were 20 true martial realm experts provided by the royal court for free. The royal court had always been strict with the experts of the prestigious clans. Even for a prestigious clan, 20 true martial realm experts was a huge burden. Chapter 334. I say, first miss, what kind of magic did you cast on them? Can you tell me? Wang Chong suddenly teased. The woman at his side had skin of ice and bones of jade, a curvaceous figure, and an elegant and refined appearance. Coupled with her cold and intelligent demeanor, even Wang Chong had to admit that she was a very attractive beauty, a beauty as exquisite as a snowy mountain or a white lotus. Magic? A hint of surprise and confusion flashed across Bai Xiling's eyes. Then, as if she had understood something, she smiled. If I tell you, will you let me join you and share your gold? Bai Xiling raised a finger and pointed at the chests of gold in Wang Chong's hands as she said with a smile. Sometimes, she really couldn't understand what this fellow was thinking. Several 100,000 gold taels was not a small sum. According to the rules, he could have swallowed it all. But he was actually willing to share it with the cavalry under his command. If this person wasn't a fool, then he had extremely high standards and was indifferent to money. But regardless of which it was, it made Bai Xiling even more interested in this youth who was even younger than her. A young miss of the Bai clan would be interested in a mere several 100,000 gold taels? Wang Chong looked at Bai Xiling with a faint smile. You knew my identity long ago. Bai Xiling's smile was crafty, as if she had known. You've already told me your name, so there are probably very few people who don't know. Wang Chong didn't deny it. There's more than one Bai clan in the capital, right? There's probably only one Bai clan that can enter the Longwei training camp, right? As expected of someone who can ride the white-hoofed shadow bestowed by the royal family. Nothing can be hidden from you. The last sentence caused the entire conversation to come to an abrupt end. Bai Xiling had used the most unexpected method, catching Wang Chong off guard, to defeat Wang Chong. The name, White-Hoofed Shadow, was enough to explain many problems. Although he did not expect his identity to be able to be hidden forever. However, the intelligence of the woman beside him was much greater than he had imagined. As expected of the Bai family in the capital. They are indeed related by blood. Wang Chong thought of the Bai family's reputation in the outside world, and his heart was filled with emotion. That family had always been known for their shrewdness. In the past, Wang Chong did not have much of a concept. But now, Wang Chong had a real taste of it. Why aren't you talking? Bai Xiling was all smiles. Looking at the young man's stiff face, she suddenly felt a little proud. This guy always seemed to have everything under his control and had a well-thought-out plan in his chest. It was not easy to scheme against him. At this point, are you still not going to tell me who you are? Bai Xiling smiled. I don't know what you're talking about. Wang Chong suddenly regained his composure and said in a serious tone. He had reverted to his original appearance. As he spoke, he patted the back of his horse and immediately urged it to turn around, heading to the other side. You can't do this. Bai Xiling panicked. You know what I'm talking about. I don't. With his back to Bai Xiling, Wang Chong's lips curled into a smile. This woman was too smart. It was not good for a woman to be too smart. But no matter how smart a woman was, in the end, she could not win against a man. Damn it. Bai Xiling gnashed her teeth. Looking at Wang Chong's back, she was so angry that she was about to go crazy. It was the same thing every time, pretending to be confused even though he knew what she was thinking. But there was nothing she could do about it. If Wang Chong did not admit it, nothing she said would be of any use. However, if you want to share the gold with us, I'll take it as a yes. Just as Bai Xiling was on the verge of going berserk, a voice drifted over from afar. Hearing those words, Bai Xiling's anger immediately turned into joy, and a gleeful smile crept onto her lips. In the end, no matter how smart a woman was, she was still a woman. Brat, at least you know your place. Bai Xiling urged her steed forward and quickly followed behind Wang Chong. Su Gan and Huang Yongtu had truly colluded with one another. When the two of them were exterminating the bandits, they had been working together. With the increase in their numbers, the success rate had also increased. It shouldn't be too much of a problem for them to complete the mission. On the other hand, Wang Chong had also gained a lackey. Using the words of Wang Chong's previous world, Bai Xiling was only tagging along with him to gain experience. Without the help of others, it would be difficult for Bai Xiling to complete the mission alone. But Wang Chong couldn't care less. In any case, he had already completed the first phase of the mission. Even if he was alone, he would still be exterminating bandits with an additional person. Furthermore, the 20 true martial realm veterans under Bai Xiling would be of great help to him as well. On top of that, Bai Xiling was born with a sharp mind, and she was simply too intelligent. Wang Chong couldn't trust a lady from the Bai clan to stay by Su Gan and Huang Yongtu's side. It would be better to leave a beautiful and intelligent demoness by his side. Xiu Xiu. The two arrows contained boundless power that could pierce through metal and split stone. They flashed across the sky like bolts of lightning, catching up to the two bandits who were fleeing in panic. Poo-pew sounds could be heard as the two bandits fell to the ground, pierced by the arrows. They tumbled down the cliff, and only after a long time did two muffled echoes resound through the air. I finally understand why Su Gan and Huang Yongtu lost to you. Before thinking about victory, first think about defeat. Before the battle had even begun, you had already calculated where they would escape to. Even if Su Gan and the others were to follow behind you, they wouldn't be able to see through your means. You simply have too many means hidden up your sleeves. It's not an injustice for them to lose. On the peak of the mountain, Bai Xiling was standing on a jagged boulder. Looking down at the scene at the waist of the mountain, she shook her head, revealing her snow-white neck, and let out a long sigh. When the two bandits were escaping, Bai Xiling had been worrying for nothing, thinking that they had failed this mission. Heavens! Who could have thought that two arrows would suddenly appear out of nowhere and claim their lives? Even now, Bai Xiling was still unable to see where the two cavalrymen Wang Chong had arranged were hiding. Hee, I knew I wouldn't be able to fool you. Facing Bai Xiling, Wang Chong placed his hands behind his back and chuckled lightly, as if he had expected it. Since he was with this lady from the Bai clan, Wang Chong didn't think that he would be able to fool her with his means. A cunning rabbit has 3 burrows, and bandits have 3 means: hidden scouts, traps, and a means of retreat. Of which, a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. As long as one observes the location of a bandit, one should be able to deduce their final means of retreat based on the terrain. All one has to do is to arrange a few master archers to wait there. It's Su Gan and Huang Yongtu who have underestimated them. Knowing that the Imperial Army will come to encircle them regularly, how can they possibly survive here without some means? Wang Chong replied calmly. His tone was relaxed, and his expression was confident. His words carried a powerful charisma that made others subconsciously trust him. Speaking to a smart lady like Bai Xiling, Wang Chong was different from how he spoke to Su Gan and Huang Yongtu. Since he had accepted Bai Xiling into his group, Wang Chong didn't think that he would be able to hide it from her. Your words sure are interesting. Means? Bai Xiling turned around to look at Wang Chong's handsome face, and a hint of astonishment flashed across her eyes. Wang Chong's way of speaking and the words he used were different from ordinary people. Even though she had never heard anyone use such words before, Bai Xiling could still roughly understand what he was trying to say. However, it's easier said than done. Knowing the terrain of the bandits doesn't necessarily mean that one will be able to deduce their retreat route like you do. Even if Su Gan and Huang Yongtu were to follow behind you and witness it with their own eyes, it would still be difficult for them to do so. In the end, it's all due to your own capability. Honestly speaking, even though you have been reluctant to reveal your identity, you are still a scion of a prestigious clan. I really can't understand how you, as a scion of a prestigious clan, know so much. I really can't understand how a scion of a prestigious clan like you could possibly know so much. The survival method of a bandit? This doesn't seem to be something that a scion of a prestigious clan would know, right? Bai Xiling asked curiously. The more she interacted with this fellow, the more curious Bai Xiling became. Many of the things that he spoke of were as simple as plain water, but in reality, they weren't easy to accomplish. In the end, it wasn't that Su Gan and Huang Yongtu were weak. In truth, their actions were extremely normal, befitting of their background. The one who was abnormal was this fellow. For a 15-year-old young man to know so many things, and his actions were extremely mature and composed, wasn't it strange? Hee, that's another story. Wang Chong chuckled heartily, but he didn't satisfy Bai Xiling's curiosity at all. No matter what, he wouldn't tell anyone about his reincarnation. Wang Chong waved his hands, and the reserve cavalrymen leaped over the fence and charged into battle. The reverberations of the true martial realm halo soon reverberated throughout the entire stronghold. The consequence of recruiting a smart lady like Bai Xiling to his side was that Wang Chong rarely resorted to tactics in battle, going straight for the kill. In front of a woman like Bai Xiling, it was best to hold back a little and hold back a little. Furthermore, the 40 true martial realm cavalrymen from the two of them were more than enough to deal with most of their opponents. In the end, bandits were still bandits. There was no way they could stand against these veterans. Be careful! Just as Xianxia was deep in thought, an anxious bellow suddenly sounded. A cold glint flashed across the night sky, and a sharp crescent saber flashed across the night sky in a massive arc, heading straight for Wang Chong and Bai Xiling. That person had been hiding in the darkness for quite some time. It was only when he determined that Wang Chong and Bai Xiling were the leaders of the cavalrymen that he slowly crept forward, bypassing the cavalrymen one after another, and swiftly made his move on the duo. This strike was released after accumulating power, and it was extremely swift and fierce. As the saber flashed, even the air was sliced into two, leaving behind two massive slashes. The sharpness of the saber was such that even metal would be sliced apart, needless to say, flesh and blood. Chapter 335. Milord, be careful. Milord, be careful. Stop him. The crowd was in chaos. The sudden appearance of the majestic saber light had thrown the two teams of 40 people into chaos. Wang Chong and Bai Xiling were the leaders of this operation. If Wang Chong and Bai Xiling were to die during the mission, all of them would be punished by the Ministry of Military Personnel, and their deaths would be recorded in their files forever. To shoot a man, first shoot the horse. To capture the bandits, first capture the leader. In a regular battle, the enemy's generals and marshals were always the priority targets. It was also because of this reason that all the soldiers would fight to the death to protect their generals. If their generals were killed because they failed to protect them, it would be a huge dereliction of duty. But at this time, everyone had crossed the fence and entered the fray. Due to the distance, no one was able to come to the rescue of Wang Chong and Bai Xiling for the time being. The situation was extremely dangerous. Wang Chong sneered coldly. Looking at the dazzling saber glint above him, he drew his sword. Just as Xianxia was about to execute the 8 steps of the furious flood dragon to kill this true martial realm bandit, he suddenly heard a clear and melodious sound. Before the sound had even faded away, a snow-white figure rose from the ground like a flood dragon, moving even faster than Wang Chong and attacking even faster than Wang Chong. Boom! This was the first time Wang Chong had seen Bai Xiling in action. Her aura was boundless, and compared to before, it was as if she had become a completely different person. The aura on her body was swift and fierce. The extremely soft and gentle aura energy was vast and mighty, spinning rapidly outside her body. Under the moonlight, the layers of aura energy emitted rays of light that were as sharp as swords. In the face of that world-rending saber flash, Bai Xiling didn't do anything. All she did was extend a jade-green finger. Her finger, which usually looked fair and delicate, was now exuding a silver-white light, as if it were a sword. Rumble! She stretched out her slender index finger and blocked the saber light. With just one finger, the saber light in the air froze. Almost at the same time, Bai Xiling, who was in the air, lifted her leg. Her slender, graceful, and fair leg immediately kicked the figure who was sneaking up on her. Those who didn't receive that blow would find it hard to imagine what kind of terrifying power Bai Xiling, a delicate, slender, and beautiful woman's body contained. In the darkness of the night, Wang Chong could clearly see the place where Bai Xiling's sharp right foot had kicked. The man's body was bent like a shrimp, and his entire abdomen had sunk in. Bai Xiling's kick actually went into his body. Bang! With a bang, his body, which weighed no less than 80 or 90 kilograms, flew out like a cannonball. With a loud bang, he smashed through more than 10 layers of fences and slammed into a tree that was more than 100 feet away. With a loud bang, wood splinters swirled in the air. The man was kicked into the tree by Bai Xiling. Silence! For an instant, the entire fort was deathly silent. Even the sounds of battle could not be heard. Bai Xiling's fearsome kick had stunned everyone. Even Wang Chong was dumbfounded. He didn't expect Bai Xiling to be so powerful. That slender body harnessed the fearsome strength of a tyrannosaurus. Goom! Even though there was no expression on his face, Wang Chong could clearly hear his throat moving. A few of his throat muscles were involuntarily swallowing. As expected of a lady of the Bai clan. Truly powerful. This was the only thought in Wang Chong's mind. To think that he was still thinking of activating the 8 steps of the furious flood dragon. Bai Xiling's attack had definitely surpassed his 8 steps of the furious flood dragon, reaching the level of his second sister and Marchioness. It had been so many days, and yet he was still standing so close to her. If that kick had landed on him, he probably wouldn't have ended up any better than that fellow. How is it? Not bad, right? Bai Xiling dusted her hands and landed on the ground lightly. Turning around, she looked at Wang Chong with a cold and arrogant smile. There weren't many opportunities to subdue Wang Chong. This was a rare opportunity. Along the way, she had been suppressed by Wang Chong, and she had been suppressing her anger for a long time. Now, she was finally able to vent it. Not bad, not bad. Wang Chong's eyebrows twitched in embarrassment. Not only was this not bad, it was ridiculously good. It seemed like he would have to reevaluate this woman. In the future, he would have to keep his distance from this woman. Lord, we've discovered a who. At this moment, a voice sounded in his ears. Wang Chong immediately recovered from his daze and walked toward the tree in the distance. There were several cavalrymen surrounding the base of the tree. One of the cavalrymen was holding a torch, and by the light of the torch, Wang Chong could clearly see them in the darkness. The person that Bai Xiling had sent flying was a tall man with a long and curly beard. His head was wrapped in a black scarf. Not far from him, the blood-stained Arabian scimitar that had flown out of his hand was particularly striking. Arabian! This thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind. From the strange flash of saber light that had flashed through the air, Wang Chong had already known that this person was not from the Central Plains. The people of the Central Plains did not know how to use scimitars. This was the first time Wang Chong had seen an Arab in the stronghold during this mission. This mission is truly a complicated one. An Arab robbing an Arab. Who would believe it if I told them? A familiar voice came from behind him as Bai Xiling slowly walked over. On the road to the western regions, there are not only Hu, Arabs, and Han. He might have felt a little guilty about robbing the Arabs, but he had never done so before. But robbing Han people shouldn't have any psychological burden, right? With his back facing Bai Xiling, Wang Chong smiled. Bai Xiling's kick had been inconceivably powerful. The Arab's organs had ruptured and he was already on his last breaths. Why you here? A cavalryman holding a torch shouted at the side. Although the Arabs had ruptured their internal organs, their vitality was extremely tenacious. He only snorted at the horseman's words, opened his mouth, and spat out a torrent of Arabic words. After saying that, he turned his head to the side, obviously unwilling to cooperate. Who can understand this nonsense? The surrounding cavalrymen were stunned. Everyone around him was stunned when they heard that string of nonsense. In the end, this fellow didn't know how to speak the Han language. It's Arabic, not Hu. Bai Xiling also frowned. In the Central Plains, there were very few who knew the language of the Hu merchants of the western regions, and Arabia was even more remote than the western regions, belonging to the extreme west. The Tang dynasty rarely interacted with the Abbasid Caliphate, and those who knew Arabic were even rarer. I had held back a bit of my strength, wanting to give him a chance to breathe. But it seems like my efforts were in vain. It seems like I won't be able to get anything out of him. Kill him, Bai Xiling said as she gestured for the cavalrymen to strike. She thought that she would be able to get some information out of him, but it seemed like her efforts were in vain. Wait a moment. Suddenly, a voice sounded. Just as the cavalryman was about to strike, everyone heard another voice speaking in Arabic. This one was completely different from the one they had heard earlier. It was an even younger voice. Arabic? You actually know Arabic? Bai Xiling's eyes were wide open as she stared at Wang Chong in disbelief, as if she had just discovered a new continent. Although Wang Chong had never said anything, Bai Xiling was certain that he was the scion of some great clan in the capital. No one would believe that a scion of the capital could actually speak Arabic. This was simply inconceivable. Bai Xiling realized that she might have to re-evaluate this fellow beside her. Wang Chong said nothing, only smiled back at her before continuing to interrogate the Arab expert. The two of them chattered in Arabic, leaving the crowd completely baffled. But even a fool could tell that the Arab expert wasn't willing to cooperate. His replies were nothing more than "I won't speak," "I definitely won't speak," "You should just give up," and so on. Just when Bai Xiling was about to give up hope and believe that Wang Chong would never succeed, suddenly, Wang Chong said something, but the Arab expert paled, a hint of extreme panic appearing on his face. He looked at Wang Chong like he was looking at a demon. What happened next left Bai Xiling dumbfounded. After Wang Chong stuffed a healing pill into the Arab expert's mouth, the Arab expert, who had been prepared to die just moments ago, suddenly changed into a completely different person. He answered all of Wang Chong's questions without holding anything back. Just what did you say to him? Bai Xiling finally couldn't help but ask. By the time Wang Chong finished his questions, the Arab expert was already dead. Wang Chong's healing pill could only delay a true martial realm expert for a little longer. But this was not what Bai Xiling was concerned about. It's nothing. I just told him that if he refused to cooperate, I will give him a grand funeral. I will give him a grand funeral of a heathen. Wang Chong nonchalantly said. Ah. Bai Xiling was dumbfounded, and then she shook her head and smiled. She didn't know whether to praise Wang Chong or curse him. Although she hadn't interacted much with the Arabs, she knew that they believed in some sort of religion. If Wang Chong said that he would give him a grand funeral of a heathen, this would be even more difficult for him to accept than death. The grander the funeral, the more afraid he would be. As expected, it's even harder to accept than death. No wonder he looked at you like you were a demon. Bai Xiling shook her head and laughed. Thank you for your praise. Wang Chong faintly smiled, unconcerned. As long as he could achieve his goal, Wang Chong didn't mind being viewed as a demon by an Arab. The interests of the Arabs were not within his scope of consideration. You're truly shameless. Bai Xiling jokingly scolded. Thank you again for your praise. Chapter 336. The combined might of 40 true martial realm veterans was almost instantaneous. The vibrating halos of the true martial realm were as tough as steel, and wherever they passed, camps would crumble. The encirclement was almost over, and they would soon be able to withdraw. But Wang Chong's mind was still replaying the final words of that Arab expert. Wang Chong had only tried to interrogate him, But he hadn't expected that the Arab expert would actually reveal something useful. Did that fellow say anything? A faint fragrance like that of a lotus leaf came from behind him. Bai Xiling had examined the Arab expert before walking over. Compared to the battle with the bandits and the Arab expert, Bai Xiling was currently more interested in Wang Chong. It seems like this matter really does have something to do with the Uzun. Wang Chong came back to his senses and told her everything that Ma Song had told him as well as what the Arab expert had said before his death. That Arab expert had originally been the bodyguard of a wealthy Arab merchant, but the merchant had unexpectedly been killed while the Arab expert had managed to survive. As the Tang dynasty's military was too powerful and he didn't have any means of making a living, he decided to become a bandit. He hoped that he would be able to gather enough money to return to the distant Abbasid Caliphate. However, because he was a lone wolf and was wary of the imperial court's regular army, he hadn't been able to make much progress. Not too long ago, he met an Uzun man. The other party promised that as long as Wang Chong followed his instructions, not only would he help him return to Arabia, he would even give him a death warrant. A death warrant? A hint of surprise flashed through Bai Xiling's eyes. Although he's called a bodyguard, he's actually a slave. If the master is dead but the slave responsible for protecting him is still alive, it's a crime punishable by death in Arabia. Even if he returns, only death awaits him. Wang Chong said, the hierarchy of the Arabs was even stricter than that of the Tang dynasty, and the slave trade was prevalent there. In this aspect, Bai Xiling had no experience, so naturally, she did not understand. Bai Xiling was deep in thought, but she did not pursue the matter. Did he say what Uzun looked like? Nope. He could distinguish between the Uzun, the Turks, and the people of the western regions. The other party only told him to come here, but did not restrict his movements. He only told him to move around as much as possible during this period of time to create trouble for the Tang dynasty. He doesn't speak the same language as these bandits, and they don't even communicate. Wang Chong said, what are these Uzun people thinking? Do you think you can cause trouble for us just like that? Bai Xiling looked confused. Uzun's behavior was very strange to her. Hee, although I don't know their true intentions, I'm not sure. However, the imperial court and the Holy Emperor had always placed great importance on the road to the west. If the road to the west is flooded with bandits and highwaymen, it will pose a great threat to the trade of the Tang dynasty. If this continues, those who merchants, Abbasid Caliphate, and Karak's Spaz Inu merchants might reduce or even cancel their plans to come to the Tang dynasty out of consideration for their safety. The Uzun has always been hostile to the Tang dynasty. If the Tang dynasty and the western regions are cut off because of this, it will definitely be beneficial to the Uzun. The only thing I don't understand is that the Uzun should understand that His Majesty and the imperial court will not give up on this road to the western regions. Uzun's actions will only cause some interference for us. It's impossible for the imperial court to really give up on this place. After all, the western regions still has the Anxi protectorate. Wang Chong said. He was also very confused. The Silk Road of the western regions wasn't just an economic route for trade. It was also the lifeline of the Anxi protectorate. The military of the 4 garrisons of Anxi relied on this route to transport supplies. Just this point alone meant that the harassment launched by the Uzun wasn't enough to pose much of a threat. That's hard to say. If the imperial court doesn't pay attention to it, the imperial court won't do anything about it. If the imperial court doesn't pay attention to this matter, perhaps the Uzun might really succeed. However, there's one thing that I agree with you about the truth of the matter. For the Uzun to spend so much effort to incite these bandits and highwaymen to move about, it can't be as simple as just plundering. Bai Xiling had a pensive look on her face. Unknowingly, she had also been pulled into this train of thought by Wang Chong. That's right, Bai Xiling. Do you know of any Uzun diplomatic mission that has recently come to the capital? Wang Chong suddenly asked. Are you joking with me? I've been in Longwei training camp all this while. How could I possibly know something that even you don't? When have you ever seen us ladies concerned about politics? Bai Xiling rolled her eyes as though she was looking at a fool. I've misspoken. I forgot about you. You ladies aren't interested in politics at all. Wang Chong also came to his senses. He slapped his head and laughed heartily. The women around him, be it cousin Wang Zhuyen, Marchioness Yi, or even his mother and little sister, weren't interested in politics at all. This could be said to be a common problem among women. Bai Xiling was clearly the same as well. The battle came to an end quickly. The 40 veteran cavalrymen of the Tang dynasty swept through the entire stronghold before continuing on their way. There wasn't a single survivor in the stronghold. And in this stronghold, Wang Chong had earned an additional 200,000 gold taels. This was equivalent to Wang Chong's monthly income from selling Wuxia steel. Adding on his previous gains, Wang Chong now had a total of 700,000 gold taels. Even though Wang Chong was a wealthy man, he had to admit that wiping out these bandits was truly a great reward. Throughout the entire process, he didn't even need to make a move. All he had to do was to come up with a plan and command the troops. And this gold was flowing endlessly toward him. The Silk Road is truly a place of wealth. If even these bandits along the way can become so wealthy, I wonder how wealthy those highwaymen are. Wang Chong sighed. Regardless of which time-space continuum he was in, the Silk Road was always famous. It was a path forged from wealth. Wang Chong had only wiped out a few bandits, but he had already earned several 100,000 gold taels. And this was only a drop in the bucket for the westbound Silk Road. It was easy to imagine how prosperous the Silk Road to the west was from this point of view. On the westbound road, the bandits were actually not the real threat. Among them, there were only a few who had reached the true martial realm. The real threat came from those highwaymen who came and went without a trace and had extremely high mobility. They were the real threat on the westbound road. This was also one of the important reasons why the imperial court assigned Wang Chong and the others to be cavalry instead of infantry and archers. The highwaymen plundered much more than the bandits, and they were also much wealthier. Wang Chong was already beginning to look forward to how much income he could get from those highwaymen. If this situation continued, it wouldn't be a problem even if the city in Nanzhao was doubled in size. As they traveled westward, Wang Chong and the others gained more and more. When Wang Chong said that he would let Bai Xiling invest, Bai Xiling thought it was a joke. How could the capital's Bai family be short of money? Even the wealthiest families in the capital could not compare to the Bai family. It was just that the Bai clan had always maintained a low profile and pursued the strategy of concealing their strength. However, as she followed Wang Chong, Bai Xiling realized that she had underestimated the weight of Wang Chong's words. In a short period of time, she had already received 300,000 gold taels from Wang Chong, then 400,000, then 500,000. No matter how wealthy the Bai clan was, it was impossible for them to treat 500,000 gold taels lightly. And this sum of money was still increasing exponentially. Even though Bai Xiling was the daughter of the Bai clan and a direct descendant of the Bai clan, she had never received so much wealth in just a few days. This was already more than what she had spent in the past few years. If even she was able to receive so much as an assistant, it wasn't hard to imagine how much Wang Chong had received. Thus, Bai Xiling didn't stand on ceremony with him at all. On the other hand, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu weren't fools either. Ever since they had tasted the sweetness of the harvest, they had also gone all out. Even though their harvest couldn't compare to that of Wang Chong and the others, it was still a huge sum for them. At the very least, it was impossible for them to obtain so much wealth from the Bai clan. Thus, the two of them were determined to compete with Wang Chong. As for Lieutenant Zhang Lin, as the supervisor of this operation, he was also glad to see the outcome. On the west path, a large number of bandits were eliminated. If this were to continue, the harvest Wang Chong and the others would receive would surely reach an astonishing figure. However, nothing on the road to the west could be calculated so simply. The operation of Wang Chong, Su Gan, and the others had wiped out the bandits one after another, and it had brought about an unexpected effect on the road to the west. Come up. Several hundred li away from Wang Chong's group, a stalwart figure more than 8 feet tall was standing on a hill, his arms as thick as bowls extending from his sleeves as he beckoned to the crowd outside. Tonglong. The halos vibrated. At least 8 true martial realm experts stepped on the sharp halos and gathered all their strength. With the speed of lightning, they bombarded the body of the tall and sturdy figure from all directions. Ding! 8 surges of stellar energy struck the figure's body, but a resounding metallic reverberation echoed in the air. It was as if they had struck a massive piece of steel instead of a body of flesh and blood. Not only did the huge rebound force block the attacks of the 8 true martial realm experts, but it also scattered their aura chis in one fell swoop. If one were to take a closer look, one would notice that a massive black chainmail condensed from stellar energy had appeared around the figure's body. The chainmail floated within the stellar energy, shrouding the figure from head to toe. Not only that, it had also deflected the attacks of the 8 true martial realm experts. Again. Chapter 337. Clatter. As the footsteps shook, another 4 majestic silhouettes joined the crowd. The halo of thorns under their feet vibrated, clearly indicating that they were true martial realm experts. At this time, the number of true martial realm experts attacking this person had already reached 12. Change sabers! Someone shouted, and in the next moment, the 12 true martial realm experts drew out their shining long sabers at the same time. As bandits, it was never their style to fight barehanded. Only swords and sabers could be used to slash and kill. As soon as the 12 shining treasured sabers were drawn, the air was filled with a chilling and dangerous aura. Clang! With a flash of saber light, the 12 sabers shone brilliantly. Like lightning flashing through the dark clouds, they struck the figure in the middle of the hill. In a split second, the green-black iron cloak on that person suddenly floated up. Like a peacock spreading its tail, it split into 12 petals and abruptly spread outwards. Clang, 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 clang. Before the 12 sabers could strike the person's body, they were blocked by the bulging iron cloak. The sabers that had slashed Jean Liuyue struck the iron cloak, causing dazzling sparks to fly. Haha! Just as the 12 true martial realm experts were about to launch another attack, a deafening burst of laughter resounded in their ears. In front of everyone's eyes, the huge black iron cloak suddenly began to spin rapidly. The 12 iron cloaks were like 12 incomparably sharp swords, continuously slashing through the air, stirring up a violent storm. Clang, clang, clang. The 12 sabers were swept by the sharp edges of the iron cloak and actually broke one after another. Everyone was shocked, and they retreated one after another. That person's reaction speed was extremely fast. Just as a trace of confusion appeared in the crowd, he directly punched out. Boom! A true martial realm bandit vomited blood and was sent flying far away. Then came the second and then the third. 4 true martial realm bandits wanted to attack first, but before they could do so, they only heard a few swishing sounds. The iron cloak swept past, and blood and flesh flew everywhere. The stellar energy outside their bodies was simply unable to block it. The few of them were greatly shocked, and they quickly retreated. Bang, bang, bang. That person took advantage of this moment to step on a chain of steps, throwing punches and palms. Bang, bang, bang. Like a tiger in a flock of sheep, one figure after another was sent flying by him. In front of him, the 12 true martial realm experts of the highwaymen didn't even have the chance to form an alliance. Wherever they tried to form an alliance, that person would appear in advance and destroy their alliance. Peng, peng, peng. One figure after another was sent flying. That person's awareness, vision, and reaction speed were extremely fast. Although he was besieged by 12 people, he forcefully turned it into a one-on-one battle. He didn't have the advantage of numbers at all. This kind of shocking battle instinct was simply shocking. Seeing that there were only 4 people left and they were no match for them, someone shouted anxiously, "Shoot the horse! Shoot the horse! Shoot the leader's horse!" His words drew the attention of everyone in the surroundings to a horse that was over 30 meters behind the man. It was an unusually tall and handsome horse with glossy fur and clear bones that was like a dragon. In an instant, the atmosphere abruptly changed. The burly figure, who was incomparably brave and unstoppable a moment ago, was stunned. He could not help but subconsciously turn around to take a look. Without a doubt, this warhorse was extremely important to him. It was his most prized possession. So, in the blink of an eye, no one knew who was the one who did it. With a flash of light, an arrow shot out from the crowd, heading straight for the dragon-like warhorse Zhang behind that person. The crowd exclaimed in shock. Clearly, no one had expected that someone would be so daring as to really do such a thing. That ear-piercing whistle was enough to shake one's soul. Just as the warhorse was about to be injured by the arrow, and there was no way they could save it from Zhang away, something suddenly happened. 1. The air trembled, and clouds drifted. A shadow emerged from that person's body, and like a bolt of lightning, it flew toward the warhorse in the distance. That speed was even faster than the arrow. The chainmail descended and extended, covering the entire warhorse. The arrow struck the chainmail, and with a deafening metallic clang, it was completely deflected by the chainmail. At almost the same instant that the chainmail blocked the arrow, a chilling killing intent flashed across that person's eyes. So, in an instant, he appeared before a true martial realm highwayman, and like a blossoming flower, he gripped the highwayman's head tightly, pinning him to the ground. "Leader, that arrow wasn't shot by me." The highwayman raised his hands high, and his body trembled uncontrollably. Immense fear surfaced in his eyes. Only by experiencing it for himself would one know how fearsome the strength harnessed in the leader's 5 fingers were. That strength was as heavy as a mountain, and it wasn't something that he could withstand. In that instant, he didn't even have time to react before his head and temples were gripped. "I know that it wasn't you. I even know that it wasn't you who shouted." That person sneered coldly, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. He exuded an indescribable sinister aura. Those 5 fingers were like the hands of the Grim Reaper, firmly grasping his life and death. "Do you think that I'm going to kill you for that, warhorse? Do you think that I don't know that you were planning to escape with a group of brothers last night? I hate those who seek refuge with me but think that I'm a fool. After making use of me to deal with the Imperial Army, they would form a faction to escape. Speak. Do you think that you deserve death?" A chill suddenly rose from the mountain. Seeing this sight, everyone was horrified, but not a single sound could be heard. It was only at this moment that everyone realized why their leader was so excited to gather everyone here to practice the Iron Cloak technique. It turned out that he was intending to make use of this opportunity to deal with that traitor. At this moment, the one who was the most fearful was the true martial realm highwayman. Last night, he had discussed pulling a group of people to run away and secretly set up a new mountain. It was late at night when everyone was asleep. Furthermore, he had made sure that there was no one else in the vicinity, so no one would know about it. But he couldn't understand how their leader would know of such a secret matter. "Leader, spare me, I don't want to hear your explanation." A bone-chilling voice rang out. "Gotcha." The 5 fingers that were like iron pincers retracted, and the huge head cracked like a watermelon. Red and white matter shot out, and it was truly a case of liver and brain being slaughtered. The lifeless headless corpse fell to the ground like a piece of wood. In that instant, silence reigned in the surroundings. Everyone fell silent out of fear. "I hate it when people betray me. You should know what the consequences are if anyone tries to do anything behind my back." That person placed his hands behind his back and looked down on the crowd with a cold and authoritative gaze. The atmosphere was somber. "Leader." In an instant, everyone's faces were filled with fear, and a dense mass of people knelt down. This was especially so for those who had a guilty conscience. They trembled in fear. "All right, you can all disperse." That person waved his hand, and the crowd dispersed like a flock of beasts. At this moment, if one were to take a closer look, they would realize that there were all kinds of people in the crowd. There were Uzan, Arabians, Karaks Baznu, Gogurians, Han. There were all kinds of people here. They weren't just highwaymen either. There were quite a few highwaymen as well. It was rare to see such a complicated group even on the Western Corridor. So, that person had made an example out of the crowd. With a flick of his wrist, he recalled the iron cloak from his beloved steed. The iron cloak flew back to him, and in an instant, it melted into surging stellar energy and seeped into his body, vanishing without a trace. "Congratulations, leader. Your iron cloak technique has advanced to the next level, reaching the level of flight. Given time, you'll surely be able to reach the next level, turning the iron cloak into a bronze cloak. By then, even the top-notch swords and sabers in the capital won't be able to harm you. At that time, we'll be able to subdue the highwaymen in the surroundings and become the strongest faction on the western corridor. Just as the bandit leader was retrieving his iron cloak, a middle-aged scholar who looked like a military advisor slowly walked out from the crowd. He had 3 wisps of willow beard in his hand, and he strode forward with a scroll in his hand. With an intelligent look on his face, he walked out from the crowd. Haha, Zhouan, thank you for your kind words. However, it's nothing much to fend off those top-notch swords and sabers in the capital. I heard that a new type of Wuxia steel sword has appeared in the capital. It's so sharp that even the Abbasid Caliphate and Karak Spaz Inu can't buy it. This sword is known as the #1 sword in the world. Even the swordsmithing clans in the capital admit that this sword is much more formidable than the ones they forge. When I'm able to buy such a sword or fend off such a sword, my iron cloak technique will be perfected. That person gazed at the sky with boundless yearning in his eyes. Hehe, Lord, there's no need to belittle yourself. Regardless of whether you have that Wuxia steel sword or not, you're still the #1 expert in our hearts. The middle-aged scholar said as he stroked his beard. Zhouan, that mouth of yours can really turn the dead into the living and the living into the dead. Even though I know that you're trying to suck up to me, I still fell for it. Hehe, that's because of the trust you have in me. Right? Is there any news from the front lines? The middle-aged man asked. Reporting to the leader, the group of soldiers that returned this time is different from the ones before. Speaking of official matters, Zhou An's expression turned serious. Chapter 338. Moreover, these soldiers always chose to attack in the middle of the night. Everyone was fast asleep, and this was the time when they were least vigilant. Moreover, everyone had returned to their lair, which made it easier to exterminate them. In addition, these soldiers are very familiar with the methods of the bandits. All the open and hidden sentries have been uprooted. Even the traps are of no use. That's why many people are actually killed in their dreams without even realizing it. Snakes had their own ways, and rats had their own ways. As an official, he actually understood the methods of the bandits so well. This has never happened before. In addition, they didn't hold back at all. Everyone was annihilated. Not a single one escaped. Therefore, it caused a lot of panic among the mountain bandits. Right now, there are already more than 10 groups of bandits that have come to us. More is expected in the future. From this point of view, it's not like there aren't any benefits. The middle-aged scholar smiled. There was always a benefit to the bandits. The most obvious benefit to the bandits was that the Iron Cloak highwaymen were growing stronger and stronger. At this point, they had already become one of the strongest bandits on the entire West Passage. On top of that, unlike other highwaymen, the Iron Cloak highwaymen were all-inclusive. Regardless of whether it was highwaymen or mountain bandits, as long as they submitted to them, they would be taken in. On the other hand, the leader of the Iron Cloak highwaymen, Iron Cloak Li, possessed incredible means, and he was able to intimidate the highwaymen and bandits alike. This allowed the horse bandits and mountain bandits to unite as one, displaying great combat power. In time to come, just as the strategist of the Iron Cloak highwayman Zhou had said, it wasn't impossible for the Iron Cloak highwayman to become the strongest highwayman on the west journey. But, Chief, although those soldiers have helped us a lot, they are not as powerful as us. But we also have to guard against them. According to their route, I'm afraid they'll reach our territory in a few days. It's only right and proper for an official to catch a thief. However, the thief wouldn't just sit and wait for death. Let me ask you, how many people do they have? What are their strengths? Which troublesome people do you have? Have you investigated all of this? Iron Cloak Li said. His words were directed at the crux of the matter, and the gleam in his narrowed eyes was truly frightening. Clearly, Iron Cloak Li had some sort of grand scheme in mind. In the Iron Cloak bandits, as long as one was familiar with the leader's style, they would be able to predict what the leader would do next. I've already asked the bandits who were lucky enough to escape, And I've also sent people to investigate the places where they make their stoves and eat. According to my estimation, there should be about 80 of them. Moreover, they were all true martial realm experts. The ones leading them should be 4 students from the training camp appointed by the Holy Emperor himself. There's a high chance that the royal court is cooperating with a few students from the training camp to use us bandits and highwaymen as practice. The middle-aged scholar stroked his beard. His eyes flickered as he deduced the truth. A student from the training camp? Iron Cloakley frowned. Even though he was a highwayman, he knew about the 3 new training camps in the capital. Moreover, it was personally appointed by the Holy Emperor. It was obvious that the imperial court attached great importance to this matter. This is rather troublesome. If we don't handle it well and kill these students, the imperial court will be in deep trouble. Iron Cloakley fell into deep thought. It was one thing to kill a few students, but if the royal court were to take this matter seriously, it would be a huge problem. Regardless of whether it was highwaymen or highwaymen, there was no way they could stand against the royal court. If Lord Iron Cloakley is afraid of trouble, wouldn't it be fine as long as no one knows about it? Besides, if you knew that they were students from the training camp, would you have given up on them? The middle-aged scholar said. Highwaymen and highwaymen were known to be robbers, and according to the laws of the Tang dynasty, they should have died more than 10 times over. After all, this leader of his had even killed the imperial army quite a few times. Yet, he was still spouting such insincere words at this moment. Haha, Zhouan, you truly understand me well. Since the students of the training camp will bring trouble to us, we won't let a single one of them get away. Pass down my orders. If anyone dares to leak the news of this operation, I'll skin them alive. Iron Cloakley laughed heartily as a cruel glint flashed in his eyes. A man is not a gentleman with a small heart. In the world of highwaymen, it was impossible to achieve anything without some viciousness. Yes, Lord Iron Cloakley. Receiving the order respectfully, Zhouan lowered his head. Officials can subdue bandits, but who says that bandits can't subdue officials? There's no need for them to come personally this time. Zhouan, make the necessary arrangements. This time, we'll wipe them all out. Yes. Hong Long. As soon as those words were spoken, the mountain trembled, and a moment later, a horde of highwaymen and highwaymen surged out of the mountain like an excited flood. At a glance, there were Arabs, Turks, Uzan, Gogurians, Han, and so on. This group of highwaymen and highwaymen seemed to cover the entire sky, numbering around 600 to 700. This number far exceeded that of any group of highwaymen and highwaymen. This was a mixed force made up of dozens of groups of highwaymen and highwaymen. Tzz. A chilling autumn wind blew, and a cloud of dust rose from the path. An invisible force shrouded Wang Chong, Su Gan, and the others. But at this moment, no one was aware of it. The autumn wind was silent. Several hundred li away, the atmosphere was still silent. No one seemed to be in danger. That lad sure is enviable. Beneath a red maple tree, Huang Yongtu glared hatefully at Wang Chong and Bai Siling as they left a trail of dust behind them. After so many days, he must have amassed more than 2 million gold taels. Let's not compete with him. We're no match for him. Su Gan said. Over the past few days, they had been competing with one another, and he had long since lost the motivation to do so. There was no point in competing with him. Even though Su Gan didn't say it out loud, he had already accepted Wang Chong's superiority. Even though Wang Chong's martial arts realm was beneath him, his ability to lead troops and eliminate bandits was indeed superior to theirs. Even in terms of searching for gold, Wang Chong's performance was superior to theirs. You might be convinced, but I'm not. And that slut, Bai Siling, she actually defected to that brat who was several years younger than her and reeked of his mother's milk. Just the thought of it pisses me off. Huang Yongtu spat hatefully. It was one thing if it was anything else, but despite working together with Su Gan to search for gold, their harvest still paled in comparison to that slut. Following behind that lad, Bai Siling was able to easily reap far more than the two of them. How could Huang Yongtu feel comfortable? For once, Su Gan chose to remain silent. In truth, he had some opinions about bisiling as well. It was just that he didn't share the same opinion as Huang Yongtu. Sugan, no matter what, I can't lose to that lass. I've checked the map, and there's a group of bandits 30 li ahead. Do you want to go? Huang Yongtu turned to Sugan and asked. Let's go. After a moment of contemplation, Sugan leaped onto the back of his steed. Compared to Huang Yongtu's meaningless complaints, gathering gold was more practical. Sugan knew that if he were to miss this opportunity, it would be difficult for him to earn gold in the future. Be careful this time around. Along the way, we've come across quite a few bandit camps that are empty. I have a feeling that our continuous extermination might have caused a chain reaction among the bandits. Sugan held onto Maju's reins and said hesitantly. It wasn't without reason that he was able to stand out among the many prestigious clans and be nurtured by them. Sugan had a sharp intuition toward danger. In this period of time, he had already sensed that something had happened to the bandits. Sugan, there's no need to make a fuss about nothing. We have already exterminated so many bandits, it would be weird if they didn't react at all. Bandits can't possibly stand up to the official army. We have more than 40 true martial realm experts here. Do you think that a dozen or 20 bandits can stand up to so many of us? Huang Yongtu burst into laughter as he scoffed at Sugan's intuition. Sugan pondered for a moment, and he couldn't help but shake his head. Huang Yongtu was right. The bandits only had 20 to 30 people at most, and they weren't particularly strong. No matter how indignant the bandits were, there was no way they would be a match for them. I've spoken too much. Let's go. The horses galloped and a group of more than 40 people galloped towards another bandit camp 30 li away in a grandiose manner. At this moment, the sky was clear, and the sun hung high in the sky. In the past few days, Sugan and Huang Yongtu had already completed the first phase of their respective missions. There was no need for them to be restricted by time anymore. They had to move out at night. Their target was now very clear. It was the gold in the bandits' camp. As for whether they had been discovered by the bandits or how many bandits had managed to escape, that wasn't something they cared about. Several hours later, Sugan and Huang Yongtu finally arrived at the bandit camp along the main road. The 40 cavalrymen dived into the forest, heading toward the mountain peak. Unexpectedly, the journey was smooth sailing. Along the way, they didn't even encounter a single bandit scout. The mountain peak was completely silent, and there wasn't even a single bandit to be seen. Damn it, I've run into another group of bandits who have emptied and retreated. On the mountain peak, Huang Yongtu kicked open the gates of the bandit camp. Looking at the empty camp, he clenched his fists tightly and cursed furiously. This is bad. Just as he was at the peak of his rage, Sugan's alarmed voice suddenly sounded by his ear. Look over there. In a daze, Huang Yongtu subconsciously turned his head around and looked in the direction Sugan's finger was pointing at. At the foot of the mountain, on the winding road to the west, a huge cloud of dust was rising into the sky. A huge group of bandits and highwaymen were charging toward them with killing intent gushing out of them, brandishing gleaming swords and sabers. Upon seeing this sight, not only Huang Yongtu, everyone's face paled as well. Almost at the same time, no one noticed that in the empty stronghold, a nimble bandit had climbed up to the highest point of the stronghold and knocked on a large bell at the highest point of the stronghold. The resounding sound of the bell echoed across the entire mountain range, and at the same time, it pointed out the direction of the bandits and highwaymen. Not good, retreat quickly. Chaos broke out on the mountain peak. Sugan led the group down the mountain at lightning speed. Huang Yongtu followed closely behind them. No matter how slow they were, it was clear that this was a trap. A trap waiting for them to take the bait. Chapter 339. A gentle breeze blew, and the leaves rustled in response. Wang Chong stood behind a red maple leaf at the top of the mountain, slowly circulating his energy to regulate his breathing. Inside his body, waves of blood-colored origin chi surged and surged like serpents. In the end, Wang Chong reeled it off like silk from a cocoon and stored it in the depths of his dantian through a special circulation. This blood-colored origin qi did not belong to Wang Chong, but to the little yin-yang technique, which he extracted from the bandits. Over the past few days, Wang Chong had been able to absorb the origin qi of the bandits almost every day. As the origin qi filled his body, Wang Chong's aura grew stronger and stronger. Even the little yin-yang technique had broken through its bottleneck and reached a small peak. Now, under the nourishment of the various origin qi, Wang Chong could clearly feel that the little yin-yang technique was extracting much more energy than before. However, it was a pity that Wang Chong had not broken through to the true martial realm, so he could not use this energy. All of the absorbed energy was stored by Wang Chong in a special way, in a special part of his dantian at the bottom of the sea. This was a secret qi storage technique from Wang Chong's previous life. The advantage of this qi storage technique was that when one's origin qi reached its peak and could no longer be raised, it could store extra energy in the body in case of a rainy day. Although Wang Chong's current strength could not be compared to before, this qi storage technique could still play an important role. "Milord!" Just as Wang Chong was resting under a tree, his eyes closed, a loud voice rang out. Wang Chong opened his eyes and saw a high-spirited cavalryman of the Tang dynasty striding out through the broken wooden gate of the stronghold, a long saber at his waist. "Milord, the battle is over. Miss Bai has personally taken action and captured a bandit. However, Miss Bai wants you to go over personally, saying that she has something to discuss with you." The cavalryman walked up to Wang Chong and respectfully reported. "Oh." Wang Chong raised his eyebrows slightly, a little surprised. Miss Bai was naturally Bai Siling. Because Bai Siling was a woman, Wang Chong's bodyguards called her Miss Bai in private. Bai Siling usually wouldn't call him over. Since she invited him over, something must have happened. This made Wang Chong secretly curious. "Got it? I'll head over now." As soon as Wang Chong said that, he removed the pouch from his waist and opened it, revealing the soybeans inside. He placed it in front of Little Shadow and patted its neck. Watching Little Shadow happily stick its mouth into the pouch, he then turned around and walked inside. After passing through many gates, Wang Chong saw Bai Siling in the deepest part of the stronghold. The young lady of the Bai family sat on a large tiger skin chair, surrounded by 7 or 8 armed cavalrymen. No one spoke and the atmosphere was heavy. "What's wrong?" Wang Chong smiled as he walked in from the door. It was rare to see such a serious Bai Siling. "There's a problem. This guy is the leader of the bandits. You can ask him yourself." Bai Siling raised her snow-white sleeves and stretched out a white finger, pointing at a man tied up on the ground. "Oh." Wang Chong's attention shifted from Bai Siling to the man on the ground. This man was about 30 years old and about 7 feet tall. He looked very righteous and had a heroic spirit. How rare! There's actually such a person among the bandits. Wang Chong raised his eyebrows, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. The appearance was born from the heart. The bandits were involved in robbing, killing, and arson. Therefore, they never had a good aura. They were used to having angry eyes and fierce looks. It was rare to see someone like this man. Wang Chong immediately had a good impression of him. "You're the chief of this bandit gang?" Wang Chong walked over and asked. "Yes." The man straightened his back and replied straightforwardly. "Even though we're bandits, we've never robbed the Han or harassed the Imperial Army. You shouldn't have captured me, and you shouldn't have killed my men." "Haha, it's rare to see a bandit like you acting so righteously. Bandits rob and rob. This is their livelihood. What other tricks can you come up with? Furthermore, the Imperial Court has always placed great importance on the road to the west. You should know how the Imperial Court deals with robbers, right? Do you think that you'll be spared just because you didn't rob the Han?" Hearing those words, Wang Chong was amused. The man fell silent. "I can tell you a piece of information in exchange for the lives of me and my brothers," the man said after a moment of silence. "Tell me, what information can save your life?" Wang Chong replied noncommittally. "A piece of information that can save your lives." The man said. Wang Chong didn't say anything. He shot a glance at Bai Siling, only to see Bai Siling's calm expression. Clearly, she had already heard of it. "Continue." Wang Chong retracted his gaze and looked at the chief of the bandit gang. Didn't you exterminate a large number of bandits previously? Didn't you notice that many of the bandits were completely empty? Don't you find it strange? Then what do you want to say? Are you saying that we're in danger because the bandits escaped? Hee, what if I were to tell you that all of the bandits that escaped went to seek refuge with a single person? What would you think? The surroundings suddenly fell silent. Wang Chang's lips parted, but he couldn't say a single word. He turned to look at Bai Siling, only to see Bai Siling nodding seriously. No one said anything. The man stared at Wang Chong. The atmosphere was solemn. All of the bandits that escaped went to seek refuge with a single person. Only those who had personally experienced it would understand the weight of these words. Along the way, especially in the recent period of time, Wang Chong had noticed that many of the strongholds were empty. There wasn't a single bandit in sight. In truth, Wang Chong had noticed this a long time ago. However, Wang Chong didn't take it to heart. It was normal for the bandits to flee when they knew that the army was coming. But now, this man was saying that all of the bandits that escaped went to seek refuge with a single person. The nature of this matter was completely different. The bandits of a dozen or so strongholds added up to at least several hundred people. This was a significant force. Continue, Wang Chong said grimly. He wouldn't believe the words of another just because of a few words. At the same time, he wouldn't overlook some important information just because of his arrogance. I don't know if you know of the Iron Cloak Highwaymen, but their leader, Iron Cloak Li, is a vicious and powerful martial artist. More importantly, he has mastered the Iron Cloak technique, making him invulnerable to swords and spears. He's the true #1 expert in the region between Longxi and the capital. Moreover, this person is lawless and unrestrained. He is extremely dangerous. As bandits, robbing is nothing out of the ordinary. But no matter how formidable a bandit is, he knows that he's no match for the army. But the Iron Cloak Highwaymen are different. They even dare to rob the army. Before this, at least 6 to 7 groups of soldiers have died in Iron Cloak Li's hands. As a result, Iron Cloak Li's reputation has soared, and he's extremely respected among the bandits and highwaymen. On top of that, Iron Cloak Li is a highwayman who comes and goes without a trace. The royal court has tried to apprehend him before. However, as soon as the royal court gets stronger, Iron Cloak Li will immediately flee to the northwest and hide in the depths of the mountains. Once the matter blows over, he'll appear once more. On the other hand, if a small group of soldiers were to appear, Iron Cloak Li would just wipe them out to bolster his own prestige. All of the highwaymen and bandits in the region between Longxi and the capital view him as their leader. Right now, it's said that he has gathered 400 to 500 highwaymen and bandits under him. You've gone too far in your operation to exterminate the bandits. Not a single one of the bandits managed to escape. Most of them were so frightened that they ran over to Iron Cloak Li's side. They wanted to pull Iron Cloak Li over to deal with you. Some of the bandits even invited me to join them, but I'm just disdainful of Iron Cloak Li's character. As the saying goes, commoners shouldn't fight with officials. As bandits, robbing is just for the sake of riches, but Iron Cloak Li kills for the sake of killing. That's why I didn't join them. However, not too long ago, I received an invitation from the Iron Cloak Highwaymen, requesting for the highwaymen and bandits in the area to deal with the official army. The operation will be taking place in the next few days. I believe that you'll be the only group on the road to the west. If I'm not mistaken, you should be Iron Cloak Li's target. As the man spoke, he swept his gaze across the crowd in the room. This was especially so for Wang Chong and Bai Siling. Clearly, the man also knew that these two youngsters were the main characters of this operation. Where's the invitation? It's here. The one who spoke wasn't the man but Bai Siling, who was seated on a chair made of tiger hide. With a flick of her finger, she took out a red invitation from her voluminous white sleeves and passed it over with 2 fingers. On the surface of the post, there was a black evil spirit protruding out. It had a fiendish expression and an evil appearance. It looked extremely terrifying. Iron Cloak Token. Beneath the malevolent ghost, Wang Chong saw 3 bold and majestic words that seemed to have been carved out by iron hooks. The sun, moon, and universe, clear air above and turbid air below. Snakes have their ways and rats have their ways. Today, 80 soldiers disregarded military orders and oppressed the Greenwood Forest, resulting in countless casualties among us. We hereby invite the heroes of the world to join us to uphold order in the Greenwood Forest and uphold the authority of the Greenwood Forest. We shall execute 80 rebellious soldiers to uphold the law. Inscribed Iron Cloak Li. Looking at the words on the invitation, Wang Chong frowned. The man had said that the leader of the Iron Cloak Bandits was a vicious and unscrupulous person, but the words on the invitation didn't seem to be written by an ambitious person at all. The invitation was written by the military advisor of the Iron Cloak Bandits, Zhou, and Iron Cloak Li's documents have always been written by him. The same goes for the Iron Cloak token. Seemingly knowing what Wang Chong was thinking, the man kneeled on the floor and explained. For 80 soldiers to know how many of us are here, this isn't a good sign. Chapter 340. As a daughter of the Bai clan, Bai Xiling had always been an intelligent young lady. Furthermore, as a lady, there wasn't much that she needed to worry about. In truth, the conflict between Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and Wang Chong had been the focus of this expedition. As for Bai Xiling, she had always been able to sit by the sidelines and watch from the sidelines. But this time, Bai Xiling couldn't help but feel deeply worried. This expedition was issued by the royal court and the training camp. Even though they knew that there was danger ahead, they couldn't possibly give up. Furthermore, the Iron Cloak Bandits didn't seem to be simple at all. Even until now, Bai Xiling hadn't found any traces of them, but they had already figured out how many people they had. This left Bai Xiling feeling uneasy, and it was also the reason why she called Wang Chong over. Xiling, it's not a big deal for them to know how many people we have. In the military, there's a method of counting the number of stoves. Our group of 80 are all veterans of the Tang dynasty, and it's common practice for us to cook with stoves. As long as they send their men around us, they'll know how many stoves we have. It's not a big deal at all. Wang Chong replied calmly. It didn't take long for him to figure out how the other party did it. What's your name? Wang Chong turned to the man on the ground. Li Xianxia. The man was taken aback for a moment, but he still straightened his back and reported his name. Li Xianxia slowly sensed that this young man with sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, and a jade-like face who appeared to be 16 or 17 years old seemed to be the real leader of this trip. Furthermore, he had already told him about how formidable the Iron Cloak Bandits were, but the young man didn't panic at all. On the contrary, he even pointed out that the Iron Cloak Bandits were counting the number of people in their group. This left Li Xianxia with a bizarre feeling. This young man seemed to be different from ordinary people. Li Xianxia. Wang Chong nodded and glanced at him. It seems like you're quite familiar with the highwaymen on the Western Path. Let me ask you, if you were one of the Iron Cloak Bandits, given your knowledge, when would they make their move? Right now. Li Xianxia said solemnly. Wang Chong and Bai Xiling looked at each other, and their expressions changed. You are too close to the Iron Cloak Highwaymen's territory, only 100 li away. Based on the Iron Cloak Highwaymen's usual style, they would never wait for the enemy to arrive at their territory before making a move. Instead, they were more accustomed to long-distance raids and taking the initiative to attack. This way, they would be able to catch the enemy off guard. Based on my understanding, I advise you to retreat while your men are still here and have yet to come into contact with the Iron Cloak Bandits. Otherwise, with just the 80 of you, you wouldn't be a match for the Iron Cloak Bandits. Li Xianxia said solemnly. His original intention was to remind Wang Chong and the others to hurry up, but after hearing his words, Wang Chong's expression suddenly changed. This is bad. We have to inform Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others. Wang Chong abruptly turned around, and without a word he dashed out like a bolt of lightning. Li Xianxia thought that all of them were here, but Wang Chong knew that that wasn't the case at all. Perhaps, one group of soldiers would head up the mountain to suppress the Iron Cloak Bandits while the other would wait at the foot of the mountain. However, their group was different. Based on his understanding of Su Gan and Huang Yongtu, they weren't at the foot of the mountain at all. It was likely that as soon as the two of them set off, these two men would rush out with their army and rush to another stronghold 30 miles away. That place was only 70 li away from the Iron Cloak bandits' territory. If the Iron Cloak highwaymen preferred to take the initiative, that meant that Su Gan and Huang Yongtu would be in great danger. Everyone, retreat! Hurry up! A thought suddenly struck Bai Xiling, and she leaped up from her chair as if she had been electrocuted. Without any hesitation, she quickly followed behind Wang Chong and dashed out of the stronghold. With the neighing of war steeds, the entire stronghold fell into chaos. Realizing the danger they were in, the 40 Tang Dynasty cavalrymen charged out furiously from the top of the mountain, not even bothering to clean up their spoils of war. Dust billowed on the main road as the 40 cavalrymen charged toward a stronghold 30 li away. Even though he had many conflicts with Su Gan and Huang Yongtu, Wang Chong didn't wish for them to be killed by the bandits and highwaymen just because of that. More importantly, other than Su Gan and Huang Yongtu, there were 40 loyal cavalrymen of the Tang Dynasty with them. For a cavalryman who had dedicated his life to the Tang Dynasty to be killed by bandits and highwaymen, this was a humiliation and a disgraceful ending. Wang Chong had spent his entire life on the battlefield, so he could understand this feeling better than anyone else. Thus, he couldn't allow such a thing to happen. Jaya. The white-hoofed shadow beneath Wang Chong seemed to have sensed its master's intentions and galloped forward with all its might. Su Gan and Huang Yongtu had set off very early. Taking into account the time they had spent on the mountain, it would take at least several hours for them to reach the stronghold 30 li away. For the first time, Wang Chong felt that a journey of 30 li felt so long. I hope that I can make it in time. Wang Chong clenched his fists tightly. At this point, he could only hope that the Iron Cloak highwaymen wouldn't make a move so quickly. Or perhaps, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu hadn't met them yet. Long. Several hours later, when they were still around 10 li away from their destination, they could see a huge cloud of yellow sand rising into the sky. Amidst the yellow sand, men and horses neighed, and war cries could be heard. In an instant, an innumerable number of people had gathered in the area. This is bad. Seeing the huge cloud of yellow sand, Wang Chong and Bai Xiling felt their hearts turn cold, and the blood drained from their faces. We are too late. Bai Xiling's lips quivered, and her face paled. No matter how slow she was, she could tell that they were too late. Judging from the surging yellow sand and the imposing aura, there were more than 100 highwaymen gathered there. To be able to gather so many of them, it was likely that they were the Iron Cloak highwaymen that Xianxia spoke of. At this moment, Wang Chong's complexion wasn't any better than Bai Xiling's as well. Just based on the imposing aura, Xianxia's evaluation of the Iron Cloak highwaymen wasn't wrong at all. On the road between Longxi and the capital, the Iron Cloak highwaymen were without a doubt the number one group. What should we do now? Bai Xiling reined in the reins and turned to look at Wang Chong with a dazed look on her face. She was skilled in martial arts, and she was the daughter of a prestigious clan. She was one of the few women in the world who had her own opinions. But at the end of the day, she was still a girl. She had never experienced this kind of confrontation between two armies and a military-like battle before. On top of that, the other party had the advantage in numbers. From a distance of more than 10 li away, it would be difficult for one to hear their words if they didn't raise their voices. It would be difficult for the 40-odd cavalrymen of the Tang Dynasty to deal with hundreds of highwaymen and highwaymen. If they advanced, they wouldn't be a match for them. Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others would surely die if they retreated. Faced with this difficult decision, Bai Xiling was caught in a dilemma. She subconsciously turned to Wang Chong, hoping to find some support from him. Along the way, Wang Chong's decisiveness, courage, and decisiveness had left a deep impression on her. At this moment, Bai Xiling instinctively chose to trust Wang Chong's judgment. Battle cries sounded from afar. Bai Xiling and the 40-odd cavalrymen of the Tang Dynasty had their gazes on him. Everyone was waiting for his decision. In that instant, Wang Chong felt a heavy weight on his shoulders. A familiar feeling welled up in his heart, and in that instant, Wang Chong felt as though he had returned to the time when he shouldered countless expectations. Back then, everyone was looking at him with the same gaze. Time seemed to have come to a standstill. All that could be heard was the thumping of his heart. It felt as though countless centuries had passed, but it also felt like an instant. Wang Chong soon calmed down. Calm down. Wang Chong suddenly spoke, his voice exuding a soothing power that made them calm down and calm down. There are still battle cries in the distance. This means that the battle isn't over yet. In other words, there's still hope for Su Gan and Huang Yongtu. Otherwise, we wouldn't have heard any battle cries here. Those words jolted the uneasy crowd back to their senses. That's right. If the battle was over and Su Gan and Huang Yongtu were dead, they wouldn't have heard any battle cries. If there were battle cries, it meant that Su Gan and Huang Yongtu were still alive. This was a simple logic. But if not for Wang Chong's words, no one would have thought of this possibility. In that instant, everyone turned to look at Wang Chong in awe. This lad is truly a born leader. Bai Xiling looked at Wang Chong with a hint of astonishment in her eyes. With just a single sentence, Wang Chong was able to stabilize the morale of the army. He was truly a born leader. This made Bai Xiling rejoice that she had made the right decision along the way. The art of war is to know one's enemy as well as oneself. Regardless of whether we fight or retreat, we need to know the other party's strength and fighting prowess before we can make a decision. If it's within our means, we will save Su Gan and Huang Yongtu. If it's impossible, we will retreat immediately to avoid further losses. As a general, we must avoid letting our emotions get the better of us. I hope that you all understand this. Also, no matter what we do later on, I hope that everyone will obey my orders. I hope that everyone will obey my orders obediently. You mustn't let your emotions get the better of you, understand? Wang Chong said those last words with a grim expression. There were only 40 of them, and they were vastly outnumbered by the other party. If they couldn't obey his orders and march in unison, they would only be courting death if they charged in. Yes, Lord. This time, without Bai Xiling's orders, all of the Tang Dynasty cavalrymen, regardless of whether they were under Wang Chong or Bai Xiling, obeyed his orders. In this period of time, Wang Chong had won their respect and trust through his actions. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.